support those who are in our industry to keep that positivity going. Now, as you go to the next slide, if you want to go to the next slide, we were sitting here talking about the weather, and you know, it was funny. At the start of 2020, I was on a panel myself, and we were talking about the coming year and what we should expect. And one of the speakers said, what we really need to be concerned about is the cat within the cat. And he kind of threw up a flag and said, are we ready for storms within storms? And I was like, sure. So this is what the year looked like in the way of storms. And so what you're going, it's really kind of scary. So I just want to introduce our panel, and Margaret will be on Zoom, but we will start. Sheri Lawrence is the Workers' Compensation and Disability Manager for Southern California Gas Company. Hello, Sheri.
Hi. Hey, everybody.
And Claire Muselman is the Workers' Recovery Unit Director and Director of Workers' Compensation at Continental Western. Claire, a proud Hawkeye. Okay.
I'm proud.
There you go. So, and Margaret Spence, founder of C. Douglas and Associates and the Employee to CEO Project, will be joining us as soon as technology allows. So let's talk about we're going to talk about in this presentation. Before we start talking about real mentorship, I think it's worth talking about the storm that is right there on the left of your screen, the baby boomer retirement and the talent recruitment and retention. And let's be honest, you know, 2020 has been a combination of all of these storms, right? You've got baby boomers getting ready to retire. You've got the talent recruitment and retention, which is a struggle. And then, oh, by the way, a pandemic, a recession, racial unrest, civil disobedience, and the 2020 U.S. elections, which last time I checked, still not over. And all of these things have, at least as far as I know, I haven't looked, but all of these things are kind of impacting how we are all working together. And, you know, we would be foolish not to look at this opportunity as mentors through the lens of what 2020 has been to us, right? So we want to talk about how we're weathering these challenges and still up-leveling talent and being ready for all of these storms that have been swirling and stacking on top of each other. And we're going to talk about our emerging talent, how we can communicate the value that they bring to our industry, and the value that it's incumbent upon us to bring into return, particularly through authentic and meaningful mentorship. We're going to talk about how to get the best candidates excited to join us and understand what we do, because that's Sheri's gig right there. Keep them excited about, there's Margaret. Hi, Margaret. We're going to keep them excited about opportunities for growth and encourage them to stay with us. And then really importantly, how do we transfer knowledge and opportunity, particularly by identifying pathways to success to ensure that we give those entering workers' comp the tools and the tactics to succeed. Hello, Margaret.
Hey, how are you?
We see you. Our founder of C. Douglas and Associates in the Employee to CEO Project, and I am. There you are.
Here. Yeah.
All right, so if we could go to the next slide. I love this picture. Before we get into the topic of mentorship, it's really important to understand why it's fundamental for us to start up-leveling those who are joining us, because the Silver Tsunami is here. We know that the baby boomers have loads of the kind of knowledge that can only come with the kind of experience they've had and the organizational and institutional knowledge to navigate what we think are choppy waters. So, Claire, I'm going to look to you as if you could go to the next slide, please, Chase. Kind of the generations of insurance, and I know that you're working on this, academically, and I would love to hear what you have to say about what we're facing.
Yeah, so I did a generational study on employee engagement in the insurance industry. And it was very interesting because you have to have X number of participants to be able to even run a study in this capacity. And it was really hard for me to find millennials that would give us a big enough volume to be able to even complete the study to begin with, which is very interesting. But when you look at some of the other research that's been put out, when you're looking at the breakdown of who's in the insurance industry, and then we can even specify it more into the work comp space, we're kind of starting to dwindle and not have as many as you would think. So I think we had the representation wise, we had about 23% millennial for my study. If you look across the board within the insurance industry and in general, we're sitting at about 27 or 28% that are millennial at the moment. And we have a very large group that's going to be retiring, and whatever the numbers look like basically we've got 76% are going to be moving on out. And we have not done anything to bring all of these people back in, or even to try and do anything from an attract, retain, develop standpoint. Now, some companies do have programs, but for the vast majority, we shouldn't have 23 to 25% of millennials in the insurance space when they're going to be making up 76% of the workforce. So we've got some gaps. And again, you can look at different studies. It's something in the 70s and it's something in the 20s, depending on if it was 17, 18, 19, et cetera. So we've got some of those things going on. The interesting thing is that when we look at how to retract, retain, and develop the millennials and now Gen Z, and the next generation has now been named. It's Generation Alpha for the I generation, for those of you with children that are born in 2010 and beyond. We've painted this picture in the workers' compensation space specifically of this being a very process-oriented, paper chained to the desk, really not a thought-provoking, meaningful, or driving purpose job, to be very honest. And so what my study did was I wanted to figure out what keeps people engaged, and is it different among the different generational cohorts. So I wanted to see what is it that makes people want to be successful if you're a baby boomer, or why do you come to work every day if you're a Gen X, and how on earth are you staying engaged if you're a millennial. And what I found was that it did not matter what generation you were in, you needed meaning and purpose. As long as you had meaning and purpose. And I've had people that'll come back and be like, well, pay is important. Yeah, to a point. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there are those fundamental things that you have to have. So yes, pay is one of those, but this is where we're talking about what makes you engaged at work. And yes, having that, those basic needs to come through, like health insurance and a lot of the basics, depending on where you are in your life. After a certain point, the playing field is the same. So when we're looking at this, how are we going to get people that want to come into the industry? I can tell you that I teach at a university here in Des Moines, and they've been talking about revamping their insurance program. Well, I think that we should actually challenge that a little bit. Yes, that's awesome for the people that know that when they're right out of college, or high school, I'm going to go into insurance. That is amazing and super awesome. But what about tapping into the psychology majors and the sociology majors? And if we started to expand our knowledge basis into showing what we really do, we are game changers that effectively help people. And we have the ability every day when all of us show up, depending on what side you're on, we all have an impact on people's lives, and we can help with the human suffering, and we help people during their lowest times. So what if we started advertising like that? Hey, Margaret, if you want to come work for me, guess what? I'm going to give you the opportunity to change somebody's life every single day when you come to work. Then Margaret has more meaning and purpose. And my study showed that those were the absolute two driving factors, is having meaning and purpose and being able to contribute to a bigger whole. So at the end of the day, how are we doing from a communication standpoint of getting that if we aren't really seeing that, and that's not usually how we are going out to market to try and bring people in. The other thing is, aside from this having a pretty big talent gap, we've got the majority of these baby boomers, they can be done by 2030. That is a lot of knowledge that is going to be exiting in the next 10 years that we need to figure out how to be doing a good transition of. Because yes, we've always done it this way. Yeah, that's, we like to bring in innovation, but when you're looking at institutional knowledge, you can't find that in a textbook, and you can't put that in a PowerPoint. We need that institutional knowledge moving forward. And I was listening to a diversity and inclusion webinar earlier today. And if we don't see people that are in the positions that we want to bring in millennials, and we want to bring in these Gen Z to show them, hey, here's what's possible. But who's there, or who will be there? We're going to be moving all of the baby boomers out. And then what's next? How are we going to be doing this better? So that is kind of a lot of the things, and a lot of the stereotypes that we've talked about in the past. We look at baby boomers as being more on that team player, enjoying being part of the process. One of the things that stuck out during my study was they stay until the job is done. And then when we looked at Gen X, they tend to be a little bit more independent and a little bit more on that work-life balance, and they like recognition and status. And then millennials tend to be more collaborative, and they prefer to be managed individually with immediate feedback. The interesting part in looking at these from the differences is when you look at the stigmas and the stereotypes that tend to be assimilated with these different generational cohorts, you're looking at people tend to be like, oh, millennials are whiny, or they're lazy, or whatnot. That's not what my study showed. Actually, everybody tends to be on the same playing field, but where you stand says a lot about what you see. And the only outliers that I could find ended up being part of Gen X, which made sense to me because baby boomers tended to raise the millennials. And so it'll be interesting to see how this tends to transition. But I think one of the best things that we need to really take focus of and accountability and on both sides is that we need to be mentoring. And we need to have mentees that are willing to come in and start learning this stuff so that we can make a good knowledge transfer as we move forward in the industry.
Excellent. So we're going to do a quick poll. So we would like to know what generation at work is on the phone with us right now. I don't get to vote. Darn it. We would love to hear what generation you're in. So if you could please weigh in so that we know that you're there, that would be amazing. Oops. So Claire hit a lot of really good points, and I'd like to, once the poll is over, go to the next slide and talk about, okay, so we know that this storm is approaching. There we go. Oh, hey, it's a starry night. So we know that the storm is approaching, right? And like any good weather watcher, and by the way, Ada is circling in the Gulf right now.
Literally.
Right? So Margaret and I are going to be battening down the hatches this weekend. But right, so Margaret and I are going to be watching the Weather Channel. But like any good weather watchers, the first thing that we do during hurricane season is we look at what we call the cone of death, but it's really just the path that the storm is expected to take. And Sheri, when I was talking to you about this talk today, something that you really identified was lack of an understandable pathway for those who are coming into the industry, and for us to understand, those of us who have the pleasure of working with them, how to help them set the path. So I would love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on that.
So, and Claire, I absolutely agree with you about we have to change how we think and how we look at bringing others into the industry. And I was just having this conversation, Claire, with a mentee the other day. Why are you in the industry? Is it, they're like, oh, I heard it pays well. But I heard it's a lot of work and a lot of paper. And that seems to be a recurring, I know, it seems to be a recurring theme. But I think a lot of the organizations, they really have to, we talk about diversity and changing how we think. We need to change the attitude at the top. And even with those of us in management, we have to change our attitude and how we talk about the industry that we're in. So those that are coming in the industry got this information from somewhere. That, because as you can talk to 20 people and, 90% of them are go, oh, really? There's an industry for that, right? Especially the work comp piece. But we have to change how we communicate. And I really think it starts at the top on how we look at bringing in talent. A lot of organizations, our departments are just they're over there. They're the ones that will take care of you when you get hurt or when you go off work or when you have FMLA or something's going on. But actually, what we do is an integral part of the organization. And without us, there's going to be a huge issue. So I really think how we communicate to those. And then we have to look at how the pathway, like Kristy was saying, the pathway to how we bring those into the industry. And are we addressing and looking at those that are already here? Because I'm seeing flight. I'm seeing a lot of younger examiners and file clerks and claims assistants are leaving. They're taking their degree in accounting or economics or, and they're looking at that other piece and not seeing a fit where their psychology major fits or their sociology major fits because they're not being groomed and they're not being mentored to use the skills that they have where they are to grow and know that you can do more than just be a claims examiner. There's a whole world in our industry open. We've got marketing, we've got CEOs, we've got, VPs. There's more, the pathways. And I think we need to communicate that better. And it does start with mentorship, and it starts with corporations spending the time and the money to provide those training programs and not just hammering in the labor code, but also talking about the career portion of it. And I think that piece is missing.
You know, Sheri, you're right
Yeah.
on that. And one of the companies that I've gotten to spend a little bit more time with lately is the Mitros, and they don't look at it like a corporate ladder. They call it the lattice. So that even if somebody doesn't have a clear, here is how you get to the top, they can go to different parts and different avenues. So you could try, and I'm going to use my own examples, but you could try actuary, you could try underwriting, you could try marketing, you could go and be business development, and they make it so that it's still a continuous knowledge expansion. And I think that that is one of those areas that all of us could improve on. Is it's not a ladder of getting from a level 1 to a level 2 to a level 3 to a manager to let's expand your knowledge base and make some of those. So this is like a lattice. So you get a more well-rounded person in general, and they continue to seek that knowledge and that challenge that'll keep them from flighting.
Margaret, you had talked about that too, Margaret, because you've had a windy path too.
Right. Yeah. What I said when we were doing the preview for this is, I think I've held every career in the industry. I started out in health insurance, and I mean, when I say every career, every job in the industry, I started off in health insurance. I worked in provider contracting. I've worked in underwriting. I've worked in customer service. I've been a bill checker at one point in my life. I have gone on to do risk management and adjusting. And I was actually a regional manager for Humana for a number of years on the health insurance side. So I took my career not because people gave me opportunity. And that's part of what I don't think we talk about enough. One of the challenges with our industry is it operates on favoritism. Okay, it's not operating on skill set. If I like you, you move. If I tap you on the head and you seem like a great person, or I fit the mold of whoever I want, that's the person that gets moved in this industry. And there's not an education of the supervisors. No person can rise in this industry without a supervisor or manager deciding that we're going to rise in this industry. But how many times have we ever, we could have, and Claire, I love you. I love the study you did. It's amazing, right? But until we get granular to where we start training managers to understand how to manage people and not just expect them to check the boxes, a lot of this is not going to change. It's not going to change.
I totally agree with that.
Right?
I think what illustrates Margaret's point fantastically was the 2019 Rising Benchmarking Study, which showed, so we've been pushing, so we've got the first ever workers recovery unit. We talk about the advocacy model, yet 76% of frontline adjusters don't understand that. Why?
Right.
Leaders. It starts at the top, just like Sheri said, and Margaret talks about, how are we training these? And it absolutely.
Right. The person that got swatted on the head and who became the supervisor or the manager was probably the least prepared person to manage a unit in the entire claims unit that they're running right now today. And none of the organizations go out and do a effective leadership preparedness process. When I'm working with organizations, I'll say to them, okay, how do you prepare your leaders so that they could see potential? How do you prepare them? Well, we don't. We give them the map of what an adjuster needs to check off. They've got to close the claims here. They've got to close within reserves. They got to operate. They got to call the claimant within 24 hours. They got to meet the client expectations, blah, blah, blah. So they've got that. But they're never looking to say, hey, this person is the most creative person on my team. Maybe we should push this person to marketing. Or this person has such a math aptitude. They came in the adjuster desk. Oh my gosh, I noticed that she can pop numbers like that. Wait a minute, you would probably be great in actuarial science. Let me expose you to that. But we get into this cocoon where you become the best adjuster when you're on the adjusting side. You become the best adjuster. And so the manager and the supervisor, and not only are you the best adjuster, but you're the adjuster that the client loves. So based on that, I can't afford to push you anywhere, and I can't afford to move you along your career continuum, and I can't afford to let you leave because you're the best I got. And we've got a lot of best we have sitting in the system right now. I know we talk about millennials, but we got a lot of people right now who are looking for the exit door.
Yeah.
And I think we want to start talking about mentorship. If we could go to the next like formal mentorship, but let's hit this poll real quick. Make sure everybody's still there paying attention, you guys. Do you have a formal mentorship program? Yes or no, formal or informal? And I think we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of that coming up next. So go ahead and vote for your choice. And then let's talk about taking on mentees and formal mentorship programs. And Margaret, I'm gonna flip back to you real quick, and let's talk about the importance of having a formal mentorship program in an organization. And then Claire, I want to transition to you about taking on mentees at different stages in your career. So Margaret, I'm going to ask you to go first.
So there are three categories. I know right now we have mentors and sponsors up on the screen, but there's a third category. It's mentor, sponsor, champion. Okay. So let me explain the difference to all three areas. A mentor will guide you and get you from point A to point B. They'll soften your skills. They'll help you correct and mold you into who you could become. They'll see your path even when you can't see your path, and they'll be there to give you guidance. But without a sponsor and a champion, your career doesn't move. It doesn't move up. A sponsor is there to say, hey, I think you would be the best person for this position. I see your pathway here. Here's an opportunity to do this. But a champion is in the room that we are not in. They're in the room advocating for you when other people might be second guessing your skills or second guessing your abilities, or maybe the leadership team has never heard your name before, and this person is going to be the champion in the room saying, you know what, Margaret's great, Kristy's great, Claire's great, Sheri's great. These are the great people on our team. I want us to take notice of them. So everybody needs three continuums in their career. You've got to have a mentor. A mentor can only take you so far. A sponsor is going to say, I think you can go here. And in going there, I'm going to help you get there. I'm going to give you that pull up. The challenge here is, and when we talk about mentors and sponsors, there are two categories of people who generally don't have a mentor or a sponsor. African American and Hispanic women tend to not have a mentor or a sponsor and may have never had one. And most people don't know how to mentor or sponsor a person of color. Because if I show up in my regalia, the real Margaret shows up, and I'm upset or angry or I'm vocal, then I get a different kind of label that's assigned to me that also becomes a derailer of my career. You know, because when I was working as an adjuster, I was the one that was most vocal. I said the truth, whether people wanted to hear it or not. So I was the noisemaker. And that was the whisper behind the scenes. I knew instantly that as a noisemaker, I was never going to be the branch manager because I'm the noisemaker. They wanted the quiet, meek, gentle person in that role who was going to validate whatever was going on. So we have to at every step of this really talk about diversity.
So Kristy.
Yes, Sheri, go for it.
So Kristy, can I just interject something right here? I know you're going over to Claire. To piggyback on what Margaret is saying, there's a difference between mentorship and coaching. So in this industry, we have a lot of coaching. We have a lot of coaching to keep you in the position you're in and to help you get your reserves in on time and to help you, like you said, check the boxes. But mentorship requires engagement. It requires being flexible. It requires valuing diversity. It requires you being able to give constructive criticism. It requires you being non-judgmental. You have the knowledge, but you have to have all of the other attributes in order to be a mentor. You have to be able to have that communication and be honest and to have that, build that relationship. And I think one of the things that needs to happen is we need mentors. And like she was saying, if the mentor doesn't value diversity, you're not going to find mentors for people of color. It's really lacking, and you have to be someone who's pushy and who wants to get ahead. I'm talking about myself. I'm not talking about you, Margaret or Claire.
Okay,
But
we're just laughing because we're with you.
if I had not spoke up, right, I could have just sat there in the seat, because a manager in this industry told me I would never make it. Why are you going to law school? Why are you doing all of that? You're never going to do that. You're just going to sit at a desk. You're going to be a junior examiner. That's all you're ever going to do. Really? What? But that's my personality, right? And had it not been another African-American female who was a manager to reach out to me, to put me in a position, to put me on a pathway to move, I probably would not have been there. But because of something she did in this industry, and I won't mention her name because I didn't get permission, but if she had not did what she did 20 years ago, right, then I wouldn't have been in position for the next position. And then that was another female where I was in the next position that got me to the next position. And when the male said, stop, you're not going any further, then it was another female. So you see the pattern. It's because I kept pushing, right? And while I was pushing, you're reaching out and bringing others along with you. And not everybody's doing that. And not everybody knows to do that, because not everybody has that mentorship to show them how to do it.
Right. And one of the things that, hang on one second, Claire, hold your thought here. I want Sheri to really share. I want Sheri to really share this. Okay. We had a discussion. We've done this a couple times, but Kristy, how long did it take from your first promotion, from your first job to your first promotion? How many years?
I think when we talked about it, I said it was 12, from adjuster to supervisor.
To supervisor. Okay, Claire, how long was it between your first job and your first promotion?
I left the company because I wouldn't get it.
Right.
And
okay.
I did that too.
Back. So I would say by 6 years.
Okay. And in Sheri's case, it was how many?
So before I became a supervisor, it was 16. And to get to where I am now, 31 years.
Exactly. That's the difference. That's what Sheri described is where every person of color is in this industry.
And Sheri, sometimes people find it hard to ask for mentorship. And you said that you were pushy, which I don't know that you were pushy, or you were you were your own champion at that point because you knew that you had aspirations. And by the way, I'd have been like, challenge accepted, let's go, right? But did you have a hard time, one, finding the right mentor, and two, asking and approaching that person and making the case to be a mentee? Was that difficult for you? Uh-oh, can't hear you.
No, because I have a big mouth. No, no. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, the audio is going in and out a little bit. No, because because that's just my personality. I'm going to ask. So I'm sure there might be some on this call right now that's shaking their head like, yeah, she asked. I reached out and said, nope, you're my mentee. I need you to be my mentor. I need to talk to you. I have no problem picking up the phone when I need help or asking. So I don't just have one. I personally I am a mentor, but I have, even still right now, mentors. And it's because I won't let them go, and they're there for me.
Same.
But right. But it required me having to ask. No one was coming to me and saying, you know what, you have skills to do A, B, and C, and I think you would be really good at this. I'd like to help you. That didn't happen. It's because I asked.
Yeah. Claire, you were saying.
One of the things that Claire, that you and I talked about was not being intimidated about taking on mentees earlier in your career. Yeah. I would love to hear a little bit more about that, because people who are, millennials or, late Gen Xers, early millennials might think maybe I'm not ready to be a mentor. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I didn't like the whole concept. Like I knew the concept behind mentor mentee, and one of my first mentors started for me just a few years ago, and he just took me under his wing to try and help me along because I didn't necessarily have the best leader at that point, and I had no idea what to do. I had no clue what I was doing, and so he just reached out and was like, "Let me help you." And to this day, I owe Mark Pugh is like my guy because he has helped me along the way a ton. But then when taking on, like, I'm a director, so I'm a leader of leaders, and so it's a different type of leadership role than being a direct supervisor. And our president at the time was like, I'm not going to be able to help you in this space. You need to have a female mentor. And so I have one now, and she's amazing, and she helps me navigate things that aren't necessarily the easiest, but she's always been a big pusher of, you need to bring others along with you. So you need to go get a mentee, get a couple of them, and make them the diverse people that you wouldn't always think of. Oh, hey, let me help you. So I think that it's interesting from the ask standpoint, because we had a women lead change conference last week that I was talking to a group of college students, and I was like, here's what you do: get on LinkedIn and find some people that you think that you've got some type of interest in, and reach out to them. Do the 52 cups of coffee a year. Find a reason that you want to talk to them. Figure out if it's professionally or personally, or if they do some type of philanthropy that you want to get involved in, and get a conversation started. Figure out if it's a match for you. And then I also think that it's important that you find somebody that you would never think that you would normally interact with, because they're going to give you a different perspective than you would ever think of. And I would say that some of the people that you would least expect yourself to navigate with or to ever collaborate with will be the people that helps you see yourself in a different light. Because again, we can't control how other people perceive us. And so there's a lot of quality that comes from having mentors that aren't necessarily in your industry, or maybe they're not in the claims world. Maybe they're in the actuarial world, or they're in marketing, and they help you polish yourself up to a different facade than you would have thought of by yourself. But with that, I think I wish I would have been a mentor a long time ago, because the table is huge, and we are only as good as those who we bring up with us. So I think Margaret and Sheri both touched on this. Like, we've got to do a better job of bringing people along with us. And it's the people that you don't even think about. Like, one of the women that I had been talking to earlier this year, she said, "I like that you are authentically feminine." I was like, "Well, what does that mean?" And she said, "Well, my parents always told me that I need to not be overly feminine, and I need to just kind of toe the midline." No, bring your whole self to work. Like, be you. But she hadn't seen that before, and that's not part of their culture. So it was
Wow.
interesting, one, to hear that, because now I'm like, oh, so by me coming in as my whole self, that actually paves the way for somebody else to do the same thing. And I think that that's where, whatever age you are, there's always somebody where it doesn't necessarily have to be age or experience, but you can get a lot from both people, from learning on, again, perception, or what are you looking to get out of this? And everyone has qualities that they can help others enhance. And a lot of times it's where you stand says a lot about what you see. But I think the components that make up a really quality mentor-mentee relationship is that authenticity piece, like coming as your whole self. Like, I know every time when I talk to Margaret, I'm getting all Margaret. And there's something unique to that, though. So if I know if I'm going to ask her something, or I need her opinion, or I need her to help, if I want her help, I know she's going to give me the authentic version that is not sugar-coated in any way, and I get the truth, which I need. And then the vulnerability piece, like, have some human connection. We're not perfect. I mess up regularly. And I think that, again, sometimes we idealize what we think of a mentor to be, but we're all human at the end of the day. And with the pandemic, you know what? People have dogs barking, kids running in and out, and it really humanizes just the work environment. And then I think the transparency piece, like, you've got to be honest and be willing to hear the uncomfortable feedback and have the uncomfortable conversations. They might not, I think when we talk on diversity and inclusion, it can be very uncomfortable, but you know what? We've got to have those conversations. And one of my mentees is from Haiti, and she's amazing. And we have some very hard conversations that I'm like, I've never thought of that before. And she's like, you wouldn't. But it creates the conversation, and we need more of those conversations, because my table's big for everyone and anyone can come, and I might not have the right answers or know everything, but at least I can get a variety of perspectives there, that at least if I'm not going to be the best person for you, I can find somebody who can be.
Right. Let's go to the next slide real quick too. Go ahead, Margaret.
No. Okay. No. I mean, I agree 100%. I also think that we have to not put the onus on the people that are in our departments or in our corporations or in our insurance carrier or third-party administrator to be the one seeking the mentors. I think it's high time that the organizations create these mentorship programs. I think I was sharing that one of the cities that I worked with, they basically they implemented a mentorship program that took people out of their own departments and mentored them up and across departments so that the leaders could be exposed to the people in the other department. People would unsilo themselves, and the mentees would have clear mentorship within the organization. I think it's time for our industry to formalize a mentorship process that starts the day the person gets hired. No one in an organization should be a leader if they are not mentoring. It's simply put, the time for us to say, well, the employee has got to do this and the employee's got to do that. I think if we want this industry to change and we want this industry to adjust, for anybody on this program with us today who is a leader in an organization, it's your turn to step up and create that mentorship program in your organization. Employees should not have to take the seeing eye dog approach, where they have to go figure it out and go ask people and say, hey, are you going to be my mentor? And the person says, well, I don't have enough time. No, formalize it so that people get ingrained and make it a benchmark for leaders. You get judged and rated based on how you are mentoring cross department, up and down and around. Don't allow people to cop out of this process. The next generation is not going to sit in the desk for 25 years. They're not going to do it. Yeah. We're going to have a revolving door in this industry if we don't get to an understanding that people are no longer going to be the 25-year adjuster who leaves to go to the next company because we poach people from Peter to Paul, right, for a $5,000 signing bonus, and you poach them. Well, you're going to run out of people to poach people. You're going to run out of people to poach. You've got to mentor, and you have to bring people into this industry. I said to one of my clients, I did an audit of their program last year, and I gave them a report, and I said, you have your entire claims department is over 55. Why don't you have an internship program with the 10 local colleges in your area to bring people in as an intern mentor program? And their leader looked at me and said, I don't know if I want to do that. That's a lot of work. This was 2019.
And that salary is about to walk out the door and you're about to replace it with a lot more work when you have to retrain them, right? Like that's the curse.
Wow.
We could go to the next slide, and Margaret started touching on this, and why it's so, there should be circles. Diversity in the industry. There we go. Just looking at the diversity that we're tapping, and Margaret, you make an excellent point. Are we looking across, like, yes, we want to look at HBCU. Yes, we want to look at maybe different professional associations, and you hit upon one that's a real struggle, which is, oh, they're doing great there, so I'm going to put them here for X. So how do we find this unique talent and bring them in inclusively? Like, I know, Sheri, you and I were talking about, you even mentioned it before, kind of the toxic behavior, the not so nice words that somebody used to describe what they thought was going to be a rather mundane career. How do you as a mentor help somebody address that kind of toxic conversation they may have had? Because that has to be hard.
Well, like Claire said, you have to be honest, and you have to give a broader picture of the industry and what we do. It's not just sitting at a desk being a claims examiner. And I think that conversation, we need like a speed button, a speed dial. Everyone's having that conversation at the same time across the industry for the next 10 years. That just needs to be a conversation that's happening over and over and over again, because there is so much more to the industry than that. And those of us who are here who are baby boomers or at the end of the baby boomer line, or the next generation, we all have to have that conversation, and we need to stop being afraid to have that conversation. And then we need to look at the talent in different areas, like Margaret said, and stop being so polarized where we're looking at the talent in one location. And we need to look at, junior colleges and not just four-year universities, but what about the junior colleges? I was talking to someone who had no idea that this industry existed, right? And it just, what they wanted to do, it just matched what they were doing in junior college. They had no desire to go to a four-year university, but here there's an industry that could really use their talent, and they were just getting their AA degree. And guess what? They're like, wait a minute, this is someplace I could probably work and have a really good career. So I just think we need to start thinking outside the box and stop being so narrow in our thinking. And the first place we need to look is the employees that are around us and have those conversations.
Yeah. And not only that, I think that, so imagine for a second, would we have a shortage of talent if we went into the communities where we have offices, and we went into the middle school, and we partnered with some middle schools, and we created an insurance program in middle school for students to learn about the insurance industry. And then in high school, we did the same thing again. And then by the time they got to college, they come back to our companies as interns throughout their college career. What's the likelihood of that employee being poached by someone, or that potential candidate being poached off by somebody at the end of their 12-year career? I got involved with the technical side of the workers of the insurance industry this year. And I found out that there was a program for middle school students to become actuaries. Okay, so listen to this. There's a program run by Hartford, I think, where middle school students, or it's funded by Hartford, middle school students who have math aptitude are selected to be a part of this actuarial science program. And they have a program in the middle school, they have a program in the high school. And then the kids go to these summer boot camps. They go to summer boot camps throughout their high school years, and they go to these other programs throughout their middle school years. And then while they're in college, they're interning with 20 insurance carriers that sponsor this program, with a guaranteed job at the end of it as a junior actuary, starting off at $70,000, coming out of college, right? Why couldn't we do something like that within our industry? Why couldn't we do that? There's no out of the box thinking to find candidates. All there is who do you know? We recruit, the way we recruit in WorkComp is who do you know? Post a job, then who do you know? And okay, we go on LinkedIn, we find that next candidate, we find that person, and we move them to the next person. I could tell you, by consulting here in Florida with a lot of the carriers and so on, and I have clients, self-insured clients who are with the carriers, I can hear an adjuster's name and I say, oh yeah, she was on my account 4 accounts ago. And yep. She wasn't that great, but okay, you got her now. Here we go.
I think you've got a really good point, Margaret, when you talk about that. And I think the programs that do exist do focus more on that actuarial science area. We don't do a good job, but we've got to facelift what we do, because I'm sorry, I'm so sick of hearing, well, I'm an adjuster. Actually, what if we talked about what you really do? Because I don't know, at least here, I can tell you that I'm not sitting here checking boxes. We're making good things happen for people and helping them through the worst time of their lives. So looking at that counseling, sociology, psychology, like we focus a ton on empathy and emotional intelligence. And how does that actually play into the bigger scope when we're looking at psychosocial issues and, the code, all of these other, like the social determinants of health, like everything else, all the sciencey stuff. We have to make this look like finance, where it's like sexy to be in insurance.
Yep.
And
we have to.
You think about who's in charge of that kind of stuff, and I don't know, just for thought.
Well,
you're right. Claire, you're right.
Yeah. When you think about it, it's word of mouth. If you walk into a room and you say, well, I started as just an adjuster. That's really no good way to start a conversation as a mentor, right? It's the just mentality isn't going to help us uplift and up level the men and women that are coming in behind us. So if we could go to the next slide, because I did want
well, hang on. I wanted to talk, go back to that one for 1 second. Sorry. Go back. Sorry. Okay, so I want to talk about this because I think it's important. I presented this at WCI last year. And one of the things that was told is, well, the reason they asked me to do this was, how do you find diverse candidates in the insurance industry? And everybody's searching for diverse candidates like we're hard to find. Diverse candidates are not hard to find, okay? We're not a needle in the haystack, ladies and gentlemen. We're not. We really aren't. I think that day was a long time ago. Of the college students right now, 2019, there was 16.9 million college students. 3.2 of them are Hispanic, 2.2 million are Black, 1.1 million are Asians. 327,000 of those are on historically Black colleges and university campuses. 49,000 of those graduate every year from a historically Black college or university. The two top HBCU, Howard University, Florida A&M, right? So here is the scope. You have the opportunity to go after 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 million people, 7 million minority students. Tell me why you can't find anybody. Now you can go on.
Gotta love the data.
Yeah.
And speaking of data.
And speaking of data, so this is another one that I presented. We have 1% women CEOs. Claire, I'd love to see you running an insurance company.
2.
Right? I want you to have that job. I want you prepped to be my next CEO of an insurance company. Anywhere. You know, Berkshire, they got a lot of places you can go there. Go there. 1%. Only 8% of insurance organizations have a women's mentorship program. There's thousands of insurance companies in this world. 8% have a women's leadership program. The average woman makes 62 cents for every dollar a man makes. Why is this important? It's important when you're like me on your last 5 years of your career and you realize that you haven't made enough all the time. And we as women end up poor in comparison to our male counterparts when we turn 65. So this is important. But here's the glaring statistics. 1.6 million women work in the insurance sector. Okay, 19% sit on board seats, 11% in executive leadership. And it took us 150 years to get the first woman CEO of an insurance company. I hand the baton to you, Claire.
Well, and that's why the mentorship is
a lot of pressure, Claire.
No pressure, Claire.
Yeah, Claire, you better get
asked to be my mentor after this one.
No pressure, Claire.
That's why the mentorship piece is important, right?
Right.
You've got a Margaret standing behind you, lifting you up and saying, I know you can.
It's like, here's the cliff.
Yes, I'm the bird. You're in the nest, and I
You're
have
not
just
going over the cliff.
tossed you out of the nest. You
got
gotta
this.
fly. You gotta figure out how to fly. Claire, you gotta fly.
Question about things, and just gotta check in one more time, make sure you're all still there. So the next poll question is going to be really interesting. Are you engaged in your current work position? So look where you're sitting right now, and it's probably in your house, and you might be in your pajama bottoms, and that's fine. But are you really engaged in where you are? Because we want you to think about whether, let's start thinking about that path. And we would love to know where we are. We wanted to know what generation, we wanted to know about mentorships, and now we want to know if you're engaged. And if your answer is no, might want to start thinking about what it's going to take to get you there and who can help you. So I think we're running close on times, and we did talk about this, about the messaging and how it fits the upcoming generations. Margaret talked about encouraging intellectual curiosity, across the span of the organization, et cetera. Claire, that Claire, I didn't get to hear from you is about sharing stories. You and I talked about that in our pre-wire about sharing stories, and I would love, I learned a lot of very valuable things with each of you in our pre-wire, and I would love to hear how each of you feel like sharing your story helps your mentor. So I'll start with Claire, and then I'll go Sheri, and then I'll go to Margaret.
So I have failed a ton in this industry on so many levels that I don't want people that are coming up at whatever position, age, et cetera, to go through the same stuff that I did. And so I think that there's a lot of value when, like, we've talked so much about, like, how are you authentically you, and what do you do when you bring your whole self, and how do you not have to dull yourself down to be successful in what you're doing. And I think the more that we can share, this worked for me, here's what didn't work for me, that is how you can start getting these younger generations or other people that are currently within, whether it's in your organization or within other communities, how we can really help them get going. And I agree with Margaret. Sometimes you just have to kick them out of the nest. Like I did that with one of my mentees earlier this year. We were talking about, she was actually sharing, this is actually a really awesome story. It's in the August, or it's in the September edition of Just Begin magazine. And we were talking about the difference in hair. And she was trying to explain to me on how, if I want to throw my hair up in a messy bun, I look stylish. If she comes in like that, it's snappy. And so I was like, tell me more about this. And so she told me all about this. And I was like, people need to read this. I was like, write this up and let's see if we can get it put in Just Begin. And boom, she did. And boom, it was in. And I was like, that is a conversation. I can't help you if I don't know those stories, but I have to go out and get those stories and find out what they are, because now I know that if I ever hear that, I've got her back, I've got anyone else's back where it comes down to those situations. But we've got to be able to share those stories and have a safe space that it's not punitive, because you're communicating and just about daily human life.
And that hair story was amazing, Claire.
I loved it.
So amazing.
She did it. So yes. That's my girl. That's my mentee. Yeah.
Very lucky. I think we've got 5 minutes left, but so Sheri, tell me, like, if you had a story to share with one of your mentees that you think would leave them on a positive. Let's leave them on a positive. One good story about being a mentee or a mentor that you'd like to share.
I can't think of one story right now. I'll just really quickly, because I know we're running out of time. I will share that the word authentic keeps coming up. And as a Black woman in this industry, I've made a lot of mistakes too, just like Claire said, a lot of mistakes. And I think it's important to share those stories because there's a human side to this, right? There's a human side that, and you're constantly saying, you can do this, you can do this. I'm always saying, you can do this, you can make it. What is it you want to do? I think it's very important when we're having those one-on-one conversations to be authentic and to ask the questions. They have to see that, you're human, you've made those mistakes and you've overcome, and how did you overcome, and give them those steps. And I think that piece of it is really important. So.
Margaret?
I agree. So I'm going to tell you what my mother always said to me. My mother said to me, my late mother, she said, where you start out is not where you end up. And you don't allow people to determine how far you should go in life. And I live with that. I made strategic moves, not based on anybody's timeline in my own career. When people told me no, I viewed that as a next opportunity. And when I got my no's, I moved on from my no's to the next opportunity. I wasn't tied into any company, any manager, any supervisor, any set of friends. Your career is yours. And if you want to say, my manager is not making me go where I want to go, that is your problem, not your manager's problem. It's called put your LinkedIn profile together and move on. Sometimes we need to leave faster to grow faster. And I think that's something that we have to learn. Figure out, and I would leave everybody by asking 2 questions. Figure out what it is that you want. And then ask yourself, why don't I have it now? And if why you don't have it now is your manager, then that's really not the excuse. Why you don't have it now is your own ability to take a hold of your determination and decide where you want to go.
Excellent.
Life is too short. If we haven't learned anything from COVID-19, as Claire said, we came here with a purpose. It's time to start using it.
Excellent. So there you go. Everybody who joined us, you have 3 mentors in a box, three mentors in 3 boxes. So I want to thank our panelists again, Margaret, Sheri, Claire. Thank you so much for sharing your time. I think we've got like literally 2 minutes. So Kristen, I don't know if there's like the shortest of all possible questions that we could give the shortest of all possible answers, but we would love to hear anything that you have for us.
Yeah, so I think the first one's the most important one, and as they put up their contact information, but one of the audience members said, how do I find a mentor? May I ask someone to mentor me?
Yeah, you should.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Look around the organization you work for now and find the person that you are most scared to talk to, and go ask that person to be your mentor.
Exactly.
There you go. So a lot of thank you. It's been great information. A lot of people feel the same way. So that's been a lot of the sentiment shared. But one of them is, how do you train one to be a mentor with all of the attributes that you all highlighted in this panel?
Lead by example.
Yep.
I have to lead by example. Like anybody that I will take on as a mentee, then I want them to go mimic what we're doing. Because again, it can be at every stage. So even if I have a 22-year-old right out of college, go find someone that's in college and start mimicking the behaviors or the conversations that we're having and make it relevant to what they're going through. I'm going to go with lead by example.
There's a great book called The Coaching Habit. Say less, ask more, and change the way you lead forever. It's by Michael Bungay Steiger. Coaching Habit. Buy it, read it.
Nice.
He's a good friend, and he wrote the most amazing book. If you are a manager right now and you are struggling to coach and learn how to manage and learn how to uplift your employees, buy Michael's book. Shameless plug.
And I happen to have it now. I'm just kidding.
I thought you were really putting it up. I'm like, let me take a picture.
I actually
give me a heads up, Margaret. I would have had it right here, a little shameless product.
I actually had it. Here. And there's a great book on emotional intelligence that every manager should read by Travis Branberry. That talks about emotional intelligence. You have to find your own center in order to be able to mentor someone else. Because if you're all about yourself, then you can't mentor.
Yeah.
Correct. All right.
And one last comment was maybe one way for an industry to understand is to interact with the injured worker community, getting their perspective and everything, which is something that we kind of do with Comp Laude. But that was one suggestion, is maybe interacting more with the injured worker community.
Agreed.
So,
That's true.
I like that.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
Yeah, so that's it. Thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of Comp Laude Virtual. If the audience was here, they'd be doing outstanding. A lot of kudos to all of you. All of you brought up great points. A lot of comments were coming up as you guys were discussing different points, as well as a lot of people being able to remember. Yeah, so
thank you, ladies. I know that you are all super busy women, and really appreciate you guys bringing what you brought to the table today.
It's our honor and our pleasure.
Thank you,
so much.
Kristy, for pulling us together, Kristy. Thank you, Kristy.
I got you, Bam.
all right.